Yeah, I'm hitting live. Hello, everyone. Hopefully, you can hear us and see us. We'll be starting momentarily. I haven't done a mic tech check because I just haven't. I'm doing it now. Testing 1, 2, 3. Can the stream still hear me? That's the question. Testing 1, 2, 3. Well, that's fine. Okay, no, I think it's good. All right, I'm ready to go when you are.
Cool. Hopefully we sound even again, although I haven't touched a single thing. So, okay, I am now recording.
I am now recording as well.
3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 301 for February 23rd, 2023. Hey everyone, Daniel Rubino here, joined Zach Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central Podcast. We got an exciting episode ahead for you folks, including Windows 11 Moment 2 is getting close to being dropped. What is Moment 2? What's in it? And can you get it today? We'll answer all those questions for you, including some of my initial thoughts of it, since probably like you, or maybe like some of you, I haven't been following the Moment 2 stuff too closely. And of course, Zach will go into all the details about all what's new with it. Bing Chat AI goes mobile, we should say. So Microsoft is not stopping with its Bing Chat stuff as it rolls it out to more devices, more users, and more different areas of access. So we'll talk a little bit about that, as well as what they still have left to do. In other big news, Microsoft plus NVIDIA and Nintendo is been happening. So Microsoft is trying to get ahead of any potential Activision merger problems with this massive announcement, which we'll break down. And a quick story on Microsoft Teams, which, as I write in the show notes, is maybe getting gooder. So Teams is one of those things where it's a pretty powerful app and it has a lot of good functionality, but the issue is the performance has always been terrible. And apparently that's about to be remedied, thankfully. So we'll explain what that's all about. Also just kind of recap some stuff in the works of different laptops and devices that were coming in that we'll be reviewing shortly on the site, as well as, of course, the thing of the week, which I do believe I actually have. I have a couple of things of the week, I think, this week. So that's actually kind of fun. Zach, how are you doing on this fine Thursday for those listening live? Yes, we are recording a day early because Zach is so popular. He has plans for tomorrow.
Yes.
What's going on,
I'm not
Zach?
around. I'm not around tomorrow. But yes, I am all good. Been an interesting week. We had Jez fly out to Brussels, I think it was, for a Microsoft thing, which we will talk a bit about. But yeah, otherwise it was a kind of slow week. You know, we were struggling for topics to find for today's episode. I think we've got enough for at least an hour, hopefully.
Hey, if not, that's fine. I have a certain puppy dog here that as
Yeah,
soon as she hears me talking for the podcast, she's like, you know what I would love to do right now is go outside. And
yeah.
so, of course, we just got hit with snow and sleet and freezing rain. So it's going to be tons of fun for me. It was a weird week, partly because of the U.S. We did have President's Day, one of the
That's right.
last
Yeah.
official days off for us until, I don't know, until the spring sometime. So it was a shorter week. And I'll be honest, when I get that 4-day work week, it's just like, well, why even bother with the other 4 days? That said, I've been occupied with meetings. I did have, I don't know if I should brag about this. I'm still debating about how I should break this, but I did, as you know, because I had to share it, and some of you know on Twitter, I did consume a 2-pound hamburger over the weekend in one sitting within about 15 minutes, because that's how you got to tackle that problem. You can't just like nurse it. You got to really just blast through it before there's a point where your brain literally sends a signal to your stomach and lets you know you're full. But if you can beat that, you're good. That's why sometimes you overeat and then you're like, oh my God, I ate too much. If you eat slowly, that doesn't happen. But in this case, yeah, it was a place called Eagles Diner or Eagles Deli, sorry, in Brighton, Massachusetts, which is right outside Boston. And they were on Man versus Food about 10 years ago, which was a US show where the guy the host, Adam Rickman, I think his name was, would have these eating challenges. And so this place was famous for having a 5 pound hamburger. Now it's not a single patty, it's just a bunch of patties on one. But you had to eat a 5 pound hamburger, and I think it was 4 pounds of French fries plus a pickle all in one
Wow.
sitting. And that 5 pounds of hamburger included like, well, since then, someone beat it. So now it's a 6 pound burger. It's 6 pounds, 24 pieces of bacon, 24 pieces of cheese, plus 5 pounds of fries. If you do that, you get $100, I think a shirt and your name on the wall, which is, of course, amazing. Now, I only did the 2 pound burger, and I'll be honest, I couldn't even do the fries because I don't like fries that much, but I couldn't eat like 2 pounds of fries. The hamburger was amazing though, and they do make a pound and a half, and they do have normal burgers. So if you just want to go there and just have some pretty good food, it's fine. But I couldn't fathom how anyone could eat a 6 pounds, six
Yeah,
pounds of beef in
that's
one sitting.
crazy.
But yeah, that is America for us. Anyway, I just had to get that out there because I thought it was funny. Let's go to Windows 11 Moment 2. So that is getting close to
Yes.
release, and how do we know that, Zach?
Well, it's in the release preview channel now. So, as is often the case with releases in the release preview channel, this is the channel Microsoft goes to when an update is basically ready to go, and now they're just testing it with an external group of people, the final bits, just to make sure it all goes together well and people can upgrade to it without any issues. And usually it's representative of if it's rolling out to the release preview channel this week, within the next 2-3 weeks, it will begin rolling out to everybody in the world. So, yes, Moment 2, for those who may not understand what I'm saying when I say Moment 2, moments refer to the continuous innovation sort of thing Microsoft is doing with Windows 11 22H2, where they intend to roll out new features on top of Windows 11 version 22H2 more often. So instead of waiting for the full release in the, as they usually do every year, new features can roll out essentially whenever Microsoft deems them ready. They call this continuous innovation. The actual updates themselves are called moments internally, though up until now, Microsoft hasn't actually used that terminology publicly. There was already one moment. The first moment release was in October 2022, and that came a month after the 22H2 release, and it added things like tabs in File Explorer and a few other improvements here and there. Moment 2 is rolling out, as far as we're aware, in March. It will be bundled with the March security updates, and it will include a whole bunch of additional features. This update, I think, is quite a bit bigger than the Moment 1 release, although I guess that depends on whether or not you consider tabs in File Explorer to be a major addition. But yeah, let's take a look at what's actually coming in the Moment 2 release. So we can expect to see a new tablet-optimized taskbar, which is a... Basically, if you remember Windows 10X, where they demoed Windows 10X, it had a minimized sort of taskbar that you could swipe up on, which had bigger hitboxes and stuff. That's coming to Windows 11 desktop, and that will only apply to 2-in-1s and tablets. So if you're using a Surface Pro or even a Surface Laptop Studio, where you can sort of pull the screen forward and disable the keyboard or detach the keyboard and completely, that mode will automatically initiate and it will minimize the taskbar, giving more room to your app, just like, say, an iPad or an Android tablet. And that's kind of the point of this edition, is to make the Windows tablet experience feel more like a full screen app experience. So that's pretty nice. There's also an update to the system tray flyouts. This has finally been updated with modern code. It has rounded corners, rounded highlight effects, and all that fancy stuff. And you can also even disable the actual system tray overflow menu itself now. So that's really nice as well. We also have additional search bar options for the search icon on the taskbar. We've talked about this before. There's now essentially three different options for the icon, as well as a fourth for actually just turning the icon off. There's the standard magnifying glass, which is kind of what Windows 11 has had so far. Then there's the icon with a label, which basically just says search, and it's a sort of pill-shaped button, which takes up more space and is useless. And then we have the search box, which is like more like the Windows 10 search box, where you can actually type into it and text will be inputted into the box on the taskbar, and you can hit enter, and that will actually give you the search result in the flyout and whatnot. So that's interesting and nice for customization, of course. So you still turn it off. That's what I do. I don't see the point in it. But it also means that the search bar in the start menu is now rounded. So instead of previously it was sort of like a square box with rounded corners, it's now like a very long pill shape. So keep that in mind. Then there's a bunch of sort of inbox app updates, search in Task Manager, as well as general improvements to Task Manager in general. But search is the sort of biggest addition to Task Manager, where you can now search for processes that are running and end them quickly. Energy recommendations in settings. This is all about being carbon aware and whatnot. You can jump into settings and essentially one-click enable a bunch of features that will make your PC more energy efficient, such as reducing the time it takes for your display to go to sleep when you aren't interacting with the PC and stuff. Tabs in Notepad, we've talked about that. Pretty basic, you can have multiple TXT files open. Do people say TXT or is it text files? I'll say TXT files. TXT files open under one app window.
Wow, I say text files.
Yeah, well, I'm probably wrong at that regarding that. And then we have screen recording in Snipping Tool. So Microsoft is finally bringing screen recording functionality to Windows 11 via the Snipping Tool. Obviously, the Snipping Tool's been able to do screenshots before. It's actually been quite... it's actually a good app, I think. It has quite a few features. You can ink onto it and stuff. The only thing it's missing, which I have heard they are considering, is OCR support, where you can take a screenshot of something and then basically copy the text from that screenshot. That is a thing things like iOS and Android do these days, especially Samsung. I think Samsung definitely does it. But Windows still doesn't, but that would be nice to see in the future. But for now, screen recording, which is a nice addition. Then we have full screen widgets panel and third-party widget support. Now, some people have said to me this is already rolling out on stable. If it is, it's not to everyone. I think they're still sort of A/B testing it even in stable, but I believe with the Moment 2 release, this will be more sort of generally available for everybody. And full screen widgets panel, pretty self-explanatory. That's the thing they announced alongside Windows 11 in 2021. Finally, sort of here now with 22H2, and then third-party widget support. We've seen Facebook Messenger, Spotify. And I think that's it. And then we've also got Phone Link, which is technically first party, and a few other things in there. Game Pass, I think, is in there as well. But we should see more third-party widgets showing up over time, because I'm pretty sure they have bigger plans for the widgets panel, including the ability to possibly run them, at least move them to the desktop, so you don't have to open the widgets panel every time. That'd be nice. It's something they have at least considered internally. Not sure for when. That could be this year. That could be next year. Not too sure. Studio effects and quick settings. This is just them sort of, if you're using, say, a Surface Pro 9 5G, for example, you'll be able to enable and disable all the AI NPU stuff with the webcam and microphone through the quick settings panel. And then finally, voice access enhancements, which is just improvements to voice access. So, pretty big update, I think. And this will be delivered via like I said, it'll be bundled with the March 2023 security update, which rolls out on Patch Tuesday. So ideally, that is when the 14th, March 14th, assuming there's no issues with it and they don't push it back. And yeah, as far as I'm aware, end users, consumers who aren't using a Windows PC that's managed by an organization, you don't have a choice in whether or not you get this update. It will just be delivered to you. It rolls out with the security update. There's no option to say no thank you. It won't, as far as I'm aware, it won't even be branded. It would just be, security or cumulative update for Windows 11, and you install it automatically. And it installs like a normal update. It won't be a new build, download, and upgrade process. So it's air quotes safe to install. By that I mean it won't be doing an OS swap to install these features. They're just applied on the fly. Essentially, the restart process isn't too long, and then you will have it. Enterprises, I think, can at least choose to disable the features. They can't say no to the update, to my knowledge, but they can say, right, you can install the update, but all the new features are off. And I think that's managed by group policy and whatnot. So there you are, Dan. What do you think of the update and what is coming?
Yeah, it's funny, as you've been talking, I've been sort of going through mine, because I always run release preview on basically all my devices, and I kind of recommend it. On Surface, I've mentioned you often get firmware updates earlier in this, and it's extremely stable. I've never really had any issues with it. But although then again, I did have a blue screen of death a couple podcasts ago, so who knows? But yeah, so I'm on that now. Honestly, the only thing I kind of care about and notice the most, and I like it, is the new search box. I like it, and I like the little graphic that's in it. I think it's pleasant looking. Someone mentioned to me on Mastodon, like, oh, why is it going to have a little picture? It looks like a Fisher-Price thing. And I'm like, I love it. I don't know. Like, you can go back to the regular search window.
Yes, you can.
Or the magnifying glass, or just turn it off and use the start search. It doesn't matter. You got options there. But I like the little graphic. I think it looks nice. It adds a little... I like the little cartoony effect. It's happy and pleasant. That with the little clouds and stuff like that for the widget bar. Yeah, I don't know. It's good. I just did the power stuff on my desktop PC. File Explorer with tabs is interesting. because that requires uh, a little bit of rethinking how I use, because I'm one of those, I'll just open multiple file explorers and that's just life. But now I have to like be like, oh, I can just do tabs. It's have to kind of rethink it. We already had a discussion about Notepad with tabs too. Like, and I get Notepad, a lot of people use it, but I've been traditionally a WordPad guy, and WordPad doesn't have that feature in there. But I might start using Notepad a little bit more. I kind of like the idea of having multiple tabs. But yeah, not a ton of. It's just a lot of little touch ups and stuff like that. But I think it looks
Yeah.
great. The new flyouts are good and stuff. And we should also mention that Edge Dev, especially if you go into flags. So you go edge colon // flags, and you type in like rejuv, REJUV. And you can do this in the other edges too, but you'll see sort of the options for the next generation of the edge design. And some of it's already on by default, but you can enable that stuff in it. And they're really rounding everything now. They even
Yeah.
rounded the corners for the main like web page view.
Yep.
So, which I think looks cool. It reminds me of old tube TVs, and it just gives us more like, I don't know, like you're looking at an old tube TV kind of effect to it. I don't know. There's just something. Maybe it's because we've been so exposed to hard edges on computing devices for years, and I just find it refreshing to see this new, or just because of the way it looks. But I like all the rounded stuff that they're doing in Edge, and I think it looks amazing. In fact, I'm kind of getting ready to switch maybe just to Edge Dev regularly
I've
on all the devices.
I've been running Edge Dev as default for the new UI since they announced it at the Bing event a couple of weeks back. I actually don't like what you're describing. The basically the bezel around web pages now. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just looks. My biggest issue with it is that no other app has it, so it stands out dramatically. It's very inconsistent with the rest of app window design language in Windows. If this was the Windows 7 days, then maybe it'd be fine, because Windows 7 had big thick borders around app windows, but Windows 11 doesn't. Basically most apps, if not all of them, have no bezel essentially, right? They are supposed to be bezel-less. Except for Edge now. Edge has a big thick bezel around a web page, so it just stands out. It doesn't look, in my opinion, it doesn't look too nice. I do like the idea of rounding off the corners at the top at least, but yeah, I think it should give me my pixels back for the web page.
I don't know what I would do with those pixels. I will say though, we've had a couple Surface devices now, right, that have rounded edges, and Samsung's new laptop has rounded display edges, right? So the actual display itself doesn't have corners; it has rounded. So it seems to be the language it's going in, and it kind of matches there. I like it, but you're right. This is just going to be one of those things where I know, and I kind of tweeted about it. For every person that likes it, you'll find a person who, of course, doesn't like it, and that's just the nature of this stuff.
Yeah.
Luckily for me, I like it, so hopefully they go forward with it, as well as some the rounding of other stuff that they're doing on there. But like even the highlighted tabs is getting rounded. Like everything's kind of getting rounded. But I dig it. I think it's kind of cool. So
yeah, we should also briefly talk about Microsoft hasn't officially. Oh no, I think they did officially announce it, but it doesn't really mean much to the end user. We should talk about it anyway. Regarding the File Explorer, with Windows 11 when it launched, they updated to sort of header UI and it looked modern and stuff. It was using I think it was using XAML Islands for that. WinUI 2 XAML Islands, maybe? I don't remember. But Microsoft has said that they are planning to update the File Explorer to the Windows App SDK, Project Reunion. What does that mean to the end user? Apparently nothing, according to Microsoft. Sort of, I think, they posted a screenshot of it, and it looks identical to the current one. But the reason I mention it is because I'm pretty sure they're doing this so that they can implement all of the improvements we've said is coming. So, we have that gallery feature coming soon, which is supposed to be WinUI based and more modern and whatnot. You'll be able to view all your photos within File Explorer with a sort of rich interface rather than using the classic sort of pictures folder view that they've been using for so long. And they're also planning to update the actual rest of the interface with WinUI. So it'll all have rounded corners and modern interfaces and stuff, including things like the details pane. And it'll all sync with Microsoft 365 and this, that, and the other. So, yeah, I figured I'd mention that they are planning to actually move the File Explorer to the Windows App SDK with WinUI 3 controls and whatnot. And I tried to figure out what this actually means, whether like what does this mean, and nobody could give me a real answer. I assume it means better performance, but nobody actually told me that, so I don't know if that's actually true. Nobody was helpful. Nobody wanted to be helpful when I asked this, so maybe it means nothing, and it just makes it easier for them to develop on their end. I don't know, but yeah, I figured I'd mention that.
Good to know. All right. I guess that's it for the Windows 11 stuff. But yeah, if you're curious, like I said, just on any PC, just hop to the release preview. You'll reboot, download stuff.
Yeah.
Then you got to make sure you go to the store and download the updated apps as well to get all these new features. But most of it should be there. And yeah, it's stable stuff. You can put this on your main machine. I don't think there's going to be any problem. But we should see this drop within the next couple of weeks anyway for everybody. So it'll be it'll probably be just what they normally do, right? That it'll be a seeker kind of thing where you have to go out and it'll tell you it's available, but you don't have to install it right away, or you could if you want to. And they probably just hit newer devices first and trickle down.
That's the thing. I don't actually think that's how they're doing it at these moments. I think they just rolled into the security up. That's how, because Microsoft doesn't want to give you the option to say no, so they're just rolling them into the monthly security updates. So I guess maybe you technically have the option to pause the updates for a week or two, but other than that, I think you have no choice. You just have to have this.
Well, that's fine too. Take your updates and like it. It's not like people get options on phones, right? Like
no, totally, yeah.
I mean, on your phone, again, which is the default computing device for most people, you just get the update and you have to take it.
Yep.
For some reason, people on PC are like, no, I don't want that. But on their phone, they're like, oh, cool, new update. Fine,
Yeah.
I'll get that. Anyway, let's go to the other news here. So Bing Chat AI has had quite a week. So, it released and then people were like in awe and just like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing. And it is cool. But then, cooler heads prevailed and people are like, well, it's got some issues. And then people pointed out some errors it was making. And then, of course, all the weird personality stuff came out there and people making it all loopy and strange, which we talked about in the last podcast. And then Microsoft basically tightened it up and said you could only do like 60 questions a day and only have 5 responses so that the AI doesn't get loopy. Of course, that was going to be temporary. And they have since now expanded that. There's still limits, but they're much longer limits now. And that'll continue to happen as I keep talking about, is this stuff is going to evolve so quickly. So people were like, I think some, AP press did a headline like, Microsoft backpedals on restrictions on AI. And it's like, well, it's not that they're necessarily backpedaling, it's that they can innovate and fix things so quickly here with the language models that, yeah, they may do like a temporary block on certain things and restrict some behaviors, but within days they can undo that because they fixed it. And that's going to be how this stuff is different from every other software we've had, where this stuff is going to be updated sort of in almost real time. So it's not surprising to me that they're starting to roll back some of these restrictions. Now, some of the personality stuff is gone. I heard some people say some of the creativity is gone. Like if you ask it to write a story now, I guess it won't do that. I should try it myself here, but it won't write the story, and instead it gives an answer about how creativity is a human thing, and you should be doing that. And some people are like, "Oh, that's so dumb." I'm like, that's actually a good thing. This is another type of guardrail that I think Microsoft should be putting into its AI, because this question about creativity is an important one. Sure, it's cool to have AI write you a story, but why? Why? It's like, what are you going to use that for? Or, hey, write me a book report on the Civil War, right? Like every kid would love to do that. But that's not what this technology should be used for. And let's not forget, this is technically Bing Chat AI. It's an extension of Bing Search. You're supposed to be able to just search info. The idea of like, well, I'm going to search how to write an entire story and have it write me the story is not really the point of this technology. So I'm okay with Microsoft putting in some of these guardrails in place and basically restricting this search stuff to a knowledge engine, which is what it's supposed to be, versus a creativity engine. And they can get around that, right? If you ask it to do, like, it'll do an outline for you and tell you like, oh, here's how to do an outline for a story. And it'll give you those tips, which I think is super valuable. So anyway, so that's happened. And so it's getting better again, and we'll continue to evolve very quickly. And I'm sure next week we'll talk about new stuff that's happened. But the other big news was, and I had seen this at when I was in Washington at Microsoft's campus, the new Bing mobile app. So it's basically the same app. The difference is, in the center, you now have the new Bing icon. And when you press it, it gets the same sort of layout as you do on the web when you go into the Bing chat kind of thing. And it's voice modality first, which is super interesting because I had a lot of discussions with people about that. And they say on mobile, they do actually see a lot of engagement with voice active modality as being a primary one versus preferred over typing, which I find interesting because I still find it weird to kind of talk to my device, but that's what they're doing here. You can, of course, type in something. There's a little keyboard icon and you can just bring that up. So if you're like saying a meeting or someplace quiet, you can obviously just type in your query. But it's a nice little addition. It's still interesting. You can't set the Bing app or this feature, though, as a default digital assistant on Android. And I don't see necessarily why you couldn't. Like Samsung has their browser you could set as that, as well as Bixby. And then, of course, Google has their stuff. So I don't know if that's coming. I would like to see that because now all of a sudden, this starts to get a little bit more interesting, right? If you could set this as sort of your default search chat, option for Android. Hopefully we'll see that. So that's available now. You can just, of course, if you're not, accepted into the AI program, which Zach, have you been accepted yet?
Did get accepted this week, yes.
Okay. So
Yeah.
we should be expecting a video soon from you, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. Unfortunately, I can't do much with it anymore, though.
Oh, well, that's fine. But you can, so if you get access through the sign up program, you'll get access to it on the mobile app. And if you don't have access, you won't, obviously. So this won't be a shortcut. But they do say the more Bing stuff you use, if it's your default browser, if it's your default search engine, and if you use the mobile app, for instance, in other words, you sign into those things, you kind of get a priority on that list of being accepted into the early preview of the Bing AI stuff. They also announced it for Edge Mobile. So kind of similar, although there's still some contradictions here. So if you pin on Android the Edge Mobile widget, which is a search bar, and it's different from the Microsoft Launcher one, that search is not the new Bing Chat AI, and neither is the voice thing. It's still the default one. But if you go into Edge and go to Bing.com, you'll get the new Chat AI layout and on the same thing you see on the web. So they still have some friction here in terms of their older technology and what they're going to be doing and contradictions there. And then Skype, they're also putting it into Skype. If you're in a chat with someone, you can basically invite Bing to it and then start asking questions within the chat, which is kind of a neat thing. And I had a lot of people, not a lot, a few people, I guess, on Twitter be like, Skype is still a thing, which is such a weird question. Maybe it's because we're on Skype right now. I find it strange, but Skype is still the de facto default universal platform video calling app. Yeah, Zoom is out there, but Zoom is still geared towards enterprise and business use. It's really weird to use as a consumer. Yeah, you have FaceTime, which is extremely popular if your whole family is on Apple and iPhones, of course. And for those families, it is a key thing. You do have WhatsApp, but in the United States, WhatsApp is not as big as it is, say, in UK and Europe. So you have that. Then you have like Telegram, same thing. But Skype is actually still used a lot. I mean, think about it. It's on Android, it's on iOS, it's on Windows, it's on Mac, it's on web. It's integrated into a lot of apps, and it's free to use, and people know the name. So I still find it surprising that people are like, that's still around, and they're still updating. Like, it's actually got quite a few updates. Skype's gone through quite a few revisions over the years, which has been a bit of a problem with its trying to ID. I will say it's the way it is right now. It's actually kind of cool. It would have been cool if it was a couple of years ago, because it is now very much a kind of a neat chat app that can do a lot of stuff, and it does have a lot of features in it. Whether this gets people to use Skype more, I don't know. Obviously, the competition for Skype is a lot more intense, as we just kind of covered. So I kind of get how. But the last time we got numbers was in 2020. They said Microsoft said it had 40 million daily active users, which is a substantial amount of people. Now, granted, that was during the pandemic, so a lot more people were looking to do video chats and all that kind of stuff. So not too surprising, but and it's probably gone down since then for obvious reasons. But it's not to suggest that people don't know Skype or don't use it. But hopefully, it'll get more things. What I want to see, of course, is they got to put this obviously in more places, and I know they're going to. Right? We don't want to rush them too much on this, but they did a quick turnaround on this. This was only a couple weeks after they announced it's already going to all their stuff. I want to see it in Microsoft Launcher though, right? Because they can build it right into Launcher itself, and that would be cool. I mean, you could even have the chat widget and part of the timeline feature, or the search bar at the bottom could have it built in. Where else am I missing, Zach? Where would you want to see Bing Chat AI put?
Windows search, I think, would be a great place for it.
Yeah, of
You know,
course.
obviously, because since it's obviously Bing search, but anyway, you might as well be able to initiate chat through there. I guess the technology behind it wouldn't go amiss in Cortana on Windows. I know that's basically a dead effort, but do you know that more smart natural language model would be a great addition to Cortana, and I think technologically would propel it ahead of at least Siri and Google Assistant currently. Obviously, that may not last forever. I know Google and probably Apple are working on their own versions of this. So, but yeah, it would be nice to see there. Where else would I like to see it? I think that's basically all the areas that you would really want it, right? Search and Cortana for Windows at least.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously no Cortana is coming back. Although we don't know, Microsoft has been playing around with agency, so maybe at some point, but right now they're just kind of weaving this AI through all sorts of things. I can't wait to see with Microsoft Launcher. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, especially with Microsoft's continued push not into Android in general. I use Microsoft Launcher even on the Galaxy S23 Ultra, but with its own Android phone line, we have the Duos. We expect Duo 3 to hopefully happen later this year, if not spring 2023. And we may even get a single screen phone from them at some point. And they have a lot more opportunity now to sort of build this technology into that and really kind of differentiate themselves, right, from the competition. Poor Google here. Now, I would never count Google out of this race, and they're not. They're a big company. They got a lot of smart people. They have to be a little bit more careful because they can't mess with their search too much because the company is completely dependent upon ad revenue, where Microsoft is not. That said, Google sort of showed all this stuff a couple of weeks ago, and it fell flat. It seemed like it was very early stuff. It's not really close to being released. It made errors. Not that Bing made errors too, but Google's the market leader here, so I think it was a bigger deal. But they're standing there trying to catch up and do all this stuff. Meanwhile, Microsoft's like, here, it's now in our apps, and they're putting it all these places. They're moving very, very rapidly. Some people would say they're moving too quickly. Gary Marcus is he was, I don't know if he still is, a professor at NYU. He studies cognitive science basically and has gone into AI big time. He wrote a book called Rebooting AI in 2019. And I'm just going to shout out, he was actually a former professor of mine. I did take a course with him at NYU. It was more having to do with language and cognition. But he's a really cool dude. I remember it was so long ago, too, because the MacBook Air had just come out and he was super excited about it. And I was talking to him about like trios and stuff and how I was working on a website that covers technology. But he's been a little bit more like, one, he said a lot of the stuff that's happening right now is not as big of a deal as people kind of think it is. And two, we need to be a lot more cautious about, especially the press. The press has been pretty bad with every time there's this like little kind of like, oh, this AI can now read better than people. And it's like, oh, that's a great headline. And then you go into the details and it's not quite that at all. And so the press has been kind of bad at sort of overhyping this technology and under delivering it. Although I would say this time is different. But I guess that segues into the story that he covered in one of his newsletters, talking about how this current version of Microsoft's Chat AI, which was codenamed Sydney, was actually first seen, or not necessarily first seen, but had public complaints about it as early as November 2022. Now, it actually goes back further than that because they've been developing this for years, and there's been this Bing chatbot for a while as well. But the reason why it was important was in November, they were apparently publicly testing this in India. And some people were already having these like wacky conversations with the AI, and it was becoming rude. And people went to Microsoft's own support forums at Microsoft Answers and were kind of complaining about it. Like, this thing is super rude and what's going on with it. And so it's weird that Microsoft had that knowledge and yet they still released it kind of as is and went through that kind of bad PR phase of this stuff where, it was all kind of crazy for a while. And I guess it gets into the questions of like, should they be releasing this stuff too early? Should they take a little bit more due diligence? Should they be paying attention more to that feedback? I don't know. Satya Nadella, Microsoft CEO, said in a CBS interview, the reason they're starting with search is because it's technically like a safe thing. Like, there's only, yeah, you can get wrong information on your search. Okay. So long as you're not like trying to save a life at that very moment or do something that can affect your like existence, it shouldn't be a big deal. It's like it gave me recommendations for a restaurant that doesn't exist. It's like, all right, that stinks. That's terrible for a search engine. On the other hand, you survived the night, right? Like, you're not going to die because of that information, nor is there going to be any permanent damage done into your life. I was going on a first date and I took her to a restaurant that wasn't there. I guess that's probably about the worst of it. And I think there's truth to that. And so I don't know, are they moving too fast? It's a weird thing because I feel like technology is always like that. If you have the opportunity to release something, kind of get ahead of the curve, and you're willing to sort of take the brunt of any criticism for it, I don't think it's too early. I don't know. What do you think about that?
It is interesting. I think Microsoft may have had the mindset that any press is good press when it comes to this sort of thing, because I think everybody sort of knows that the bad stuff it says is gonna happen. And I do wonder, because as you mentioned, Microsoft has been testing this for well over a couple of years at this point. And, people all the way back in 2021 were complaining that it was being rude and all that other stuff. I do wonder if maybe it's not something that can just sort of be solved. It can't be tamed in that way because of the nature of the technology. The technology being, it's supposed to be intelligent. It's supposed to be able to give you answers. It's supposed to be able to it's not thinking for itself. I don't want to say it's sentient because it certainly is not. But it's supposed to come across as a human being. And those parameters for the software, whatever they may be, you can't lock that stuff down without it becoming a robot and without it just giving you generic answers for lots of things, right? So maybe Microsoft I'm sure they tried to tame it and tried to turn it down without removing that human element and just couldn't find a balance. So maybe they were like, listen, it's sometimes going to say stupid things, but this is why, and they announced last week that they're limiting topics, so like 5 messages per topic, 50 messages per day. I think they're going to up that to 6 messages per topic, 60 messages a day. And obviously that will keep increasing as they slowly but surely figure out how to, I guess, tame it enough. Because the problem with the chat assistant so far is it gets confused. After long conversations, it can't keep up with all the context and all the information that's been provided. So it sort of goes essentially rampant. It goes off the rails. It doesn't really know what it's doing. It starts saying weird things. And I think that's fascinating that the software's doing that. And so to tame it, obviously they've just said, right, people can't chat with it more than 5 times in a certain topic. That way, Bing can keep hold of all the information without going insane. And that's how they've gone around that. But then, as you mentioned, people have complained that now the Bing chatbot has essentially been neutered. It can't. It's not as fun. It's not gonna, you try to ask it to do things even on a slightly creative level. It will say, sorry, I don't want to do that. You can't even ask it about itself anymore. You used to be able to say, hey, what do you do? How do you work? It goes, sorry, I don't want to talk about that. Because it's like Microsoft doesn't want it to enter that realm of, it's being more personable. So therefore it might have the potential to say silly things. And I think at the end of the day, Microsoft should just, obviously, it's bad if it says wrong information, but if it's being rude, I don't think that's the end of the world. Obviously, if it's a child using it, then maybe it's probably a bad headline. But then in that case, they should just limit the service to anyone over the age of 13, right? Like, I'm sure it already is. You can't sign up. You can't use this without being signed into a Microsoft account. And I'm almost certain to have a Microsoft account, you need to be 13 or above, or at the very least, you need to have a parent create the account for you and have them be the guardian for that account. So I don't know, is the F word so bad at the age of 13? I don't know, but yeah, it's fascinating. I do find it fascinating, and the media and everybody like freaking out over how amazing it was at the launch event was all part of the Microsoft plan, right? The whole idea of that this event was a secret, air quote, secret event that they wouldn't tell anyone what the event was about, but they were like, you want to be here, you need to come here. We almost didn't go, right? Like, it was a conversation we had where it was like, dude, what is this going to be? And we decided to take the plunge. But the fact that there wasn't a pre-briefing or a session for media before the event where they could tell us about the announcements and give us opportunities to ask questions ahead of time, a lot of press was sort of blindsided, so they didn't really have the right questions to ask. And that allowed Microsoft to skate under the radar a little bit, and then obviously people started using it, and it's like, actually, a lot of this stuff is wrong / hilarious, and that's fine. And that's also why Google is taking its time with this, because unlike Microsoft, and this is something we also talked about, Microsoft can take these risks and afford to sort of take the brunt of these bad headlines. Google can't, because you saw what happened to Google's stocks when they announced their Bard stuff, and in the trailer or whatever it was, it got something wrong. No, it wasn't even a huge detail, but it did get something wrong. I think Google's stocks plummeted, like, I don't remember what it was, but like $1 billion or something, maybe, or $1 million, something like that. That wouldn't happen with Microsoft because no one cares about Bing. So it doesn't matter to Microsoft. But with Google, any small mistake like that...
It was $100 billion.
Oh, my goodness. But things like Google, that's a big deal to Google because Google's entire business is search. So if Google is to introduce a new paradigm for searching, and it sometimes gets things wrong, or maybe not sometimes, but more often gets things wrong, and is an engine for bad press, that's going to affect Google's bottom line way more than Microsoft. So that's why Google's taking it slow and Microsoft isn't, because they can get ahead. They know they can get ahead without too much damage.
And to put it into context, that 2.7 date still, that wasn't a fluke. So their stock was at $108 per share on February 6th, February 7th. And then it dropped to 94. Oops. Sorry, I just lost it. It dropped out to around $94 after that was the big drop. But it's actually today trading at $90.
Wow, it's still down. Jeez.
Yeah, so it actually went down further. Yeah, it dropped down to 90.15. Let's see where it is right now. Yeah, it dropped down to 93. It went back up to 97, and then it's continued to drop, and it's now even lower than it was. So they lost a lot of money.
I don't even think Google's ever going to ship a product like this. I don't think it makes sense for their business. Obviously, they have announced that they're going to do something in regards to sort of a chat assistant, but I do not think it's going to be as front and center as the Bing version is. I still think for Google, it will always be that search box. You type your query, hit enter, and you'll get a page of links, because Google makes money through sponsored links and stuff. It's a lot harder to integrate sponsored links into a natural language response from a bot. Right, especially if it's like a specific query. The good thing about Google's current model of search, or the current model of general search, is that your specific query can yield multiple results. However, talking to a natural language bot, if you asked it a specific query, it would, natural language would imply it's going to respond with a single answer. And that's not great for business when you have sponsored links and other things here, this, that, and the other. So I think Google's not even going to try and tackle this Bing thing as full force as I think maybe some of us are expecting. I think Google's going to try and convince the world that actually traditional search is still great and this Bing AI stuff is a fad. What they're going to do is they're going to put their stuff into Google Assistant. That's where they want their tech to shine, rather than Google Search.
There's a lot of places they can put it, though. And by the way, I was on This Week in Tech Twit on Sunday, and we had some really interesting. Ben Parr was on there. And we had a really good discussion. It was a whole podcast was kind of dedicated to discussion of AI. And, they could put it in other places, right? They do have their Chrome browser, of course. They have Chrome OS. They can do stuff. They can actually put it into Android itself. You did mention their assistant. I think that's an obvious one. And, of course, enhanced search with chat. So I think they will do this. But I think Microsoft, and the stories coming out more, has been doing this longer term. They've just been, there's a story The Verge ran today. I talk about how some of this started 6 years ago. And I mentioned in previous podcast in 2020, Microsoft was already hooking up with OpenAI to use its supercomputer to train these language models. So Microsoft's really been kind of ahead of this, I think, and just investing more and working more closely with, luckily, a company like OpenAI, who is really kind of pioneering a lot of this technology. And they just managed to also form a really good relationship with that company because their values are aligned between them. And I think it just kind of worked out for Microsoft that they were just this time ahead of the curve, ahead in development. They had more access to their supercomputer and a good company to partner with in this technology. And they did a good job of kind of keeping a lot of this secret. And then, as you mentioned, of course, yeah, they can take bigger risks, of course. So they can just kind of throw this
Yeah.
out there. Like, okay, so to get bad press on Bing, what happens? They lose market share. Like, oh no,
Right. Yeah.
like we're in single digits now. Now we're in lower single digit. But if anything, the hype this time is going to outweigh any negative press for them. Whereas Google, as I mentioned, their advertising revenue, and don't forget that money and that stock drop is, I think, more. Yeah, the Bard stuff doesn't help, and how it didn't sell a lot of people on that. Oh, Google's got this. They also are just facing, because they're an advertising company, and that's what really Google is. Uh, the current economic conditions aren't very favorable to their business
Right.
model. And so a lot of people also question about how they have so much tied up in the ad revenue business that they're not quite as diversified as Microsoft. And Microsoft is very diversified, which is why when we talk about a bad quarter for Windows or laptop sales, it's like, oh, that sucks. That's bad. The company's fine because they have Azure, they have Office, they have like Xbox, they have all these other areas of which are still doing well, that they can have each one division can have a bad quarter or two, and it's not going to affect the bottom line. Google, they have just a bad, the current consumer economic situation declines, they lose advertising, and that affects them big time. And there was a good article recently about this, about how uh, the company became too dependent on advertising, and basically the company, it helped insulate the company from criticisms from other projects that they were working on that weren't making money or weren't doing as well. Because everybody was like, well, our advertising is kind of covering this. And now that's starting to pull back. And they've canceled a ton of projects, including a lot of research stuff. And, they haven't done another Pixel book. And, there's not another one coming as far as we know. But anything, they've really cut back and curtailed on their hardware stuff. So they're in a different situation than Microsoft here. So it is kind of cool to see, Microsoft being a little bit ahead of the
I
situation. Yeah.
I am curious whether or not you think this Bing chat and this whole push with AI on Bing, do you think this will result in more market share for Bing? Or do you think this is just a thing that will benefit its existing users? I'm sure Microsoft has seen a huge increase in current usage since the announcement, but will they maintain that, or will it die back down and go back to how it was before? Will people go, oh, this is cool. Actually, I'm going to just keep using Google. Thanks. Right? What do you think?
It's a tough problem. It's no different than Edge browser market share.
Yeah.
No matter how good Edge gets, it's hard to get people to switch over. That said, they're gaining a lot of interest, right? And a
Right.
lot of positive press coverage. And it's generating, this is the biggest news that's happened to Bing in forever, right? So more people are willing to try it and give it a shot. And it is the new shiny thing. If they can roll it out to more people, polish it off more, yeah, I think it's going to, there's been a couple articles written already by people in the press saying, I've been a Google search user for years, but now, I'm switching to Bing. So like, that's not going to be a lot of people, but it'll be enough to generate that, like, oh, this is actually not only a real alternative, but now Bing is actually better. Now, how long that lead, in terms of being better lasts is going to be a big question. Because like I said, as much as we're kind of being down on Google here, I definitely would not say, Google's out of this picture. They're going to come back.
No.
They're going to come back with a strong product, and they're going to be challenging Microsoft. But by that point, Microsoft's going to have, again, AI in all of its products. Yeah, Google has Sheets and Docs too, but Microsoft 365, aka Office, is like the big seller. Teams, we talked about a few weeks ago, which we'll segue into now, but Teams has this new feature coming that if you're in a meeting, it will record the audio and then auto summarize the entire meeting for you, and it'll identify all the speakers individually. and then it'll summarize the meeting and it'll give you actionable points that are supposed to be done by people in that meeting. So if you missed it, you can just read the brief on it. Like that's massive technology. And that's something Slack doesn't have, is not going to have anytime soon. And Google doesn't have any product that necessarily fits what Teams is to begin with. So it's them putting it in all these different areas that's really going to, and that's why I think investors are really happy with Microsoft, because they said that's what they're going to do, and they're already doing it. Word Online, Tom Warren was talking about this. Word Online has a feature where you can upload, like if say you are in a meeting or in an interview and you record the audio, which a lot of us often do, you can take that audio, upload it to Word, it'll transcribe it for you and identify the speakers. And that
Yeah.
makes our jobs way easier, because it's actually really hard to be, live blogging something and get a quote completely accurate. Uh, but you can do that for anything, right? You can do that for meetings and stuff like that. So it's all these little places that they're putting it. And then we haven't even thought about all the other things like in To Do, and not the chat model, but this idea of AI helping you and basically proactively doing tasks for you. That's coming next. So, email management and triage, all this stuff is going to be really important. Like this idea that uh, maybe there will be like a centralized AI something in Windows that takes all your most important emails and your calendar appointments and contacts and events that are happening around you, kind of gives you that summary. Stuff like that is going to be very important for computing going forward. So I think that's where Microsoft is going to have still an advantage here beyond search. But yeah, getting people to switch, always going to be a tough problem. I think they'll gain, but we talked about that, right? That number, for every percentage point in market share advertising that they gain for search, it's $2 billion in annual revenue. So
Right.
like even if they just gain a couple of points, they're bringing in billions of dollars, which is going to be good for them. So they don't need to beat Google in market share, which they never would anyway. But even just peeling off a couple of those points, I think will be important. And I guess that segues nicely into, we'll do the Teams first and come back to the NVIDIA story. But Microsoft Teams, I wrote, is getting gooder. Actually, I got to bring up the story here. But the idea here is a pretty big one, which is it's going to get a massive performance boost and update pretty soon. Apparently, the preview is going to roll out in March, which is literally just around the corner. And again, this is kind of what I like to hear, right? They kind of kept the secret, which is that they rewrote the app from the ground up. It's supposed to use 50% less memory, less CPU power, and deliver better battery life than the current version of Teams. Let's see, it was going to, because the current one was built on what?
Electron.
Yeah, Electron, which is, Electron's neat because it's a cross-platform technology and it was easier. The reason they did that was they wanted to get Teams out very quickly, and
Yes.
you can't just release it on one platform. You have to just get it out on everywhere at the same time to make it really valuable. And they really wanted to go after Slack. So they took, I think, an easier route, which was Electron. But since then, new tech has come out, and that's WebView 2. And so that's apparently what they're switching to, and it uses React rather than JavaScript. Uh, I think this is huge news because you and I have criticized Teams a
I
lot,
think
not
everybody
because
has.
of the functionality. Yeah, a lot of people have. And it's not because of the functionality. The functionality and features are actually pretty rad. It's just the app itself is not fun to use, and it's slow, and it's
Yeah.
just, ugh. If they can make this 50% faster and use less memory and all that stuff, and I presume there may be some new UI changes, hopefully, that really is interesting, because then maybe, more people will not only start to use it more, but the current people who are using it, a lot of people who are using it because they have to, not because they want to. Hopefully they'll switch that category, right? They'll go from, this is something I use but I don't like, to something I use and I actually kind of really like it now. It kind of makes sense, So that's, I think, a big deal for them. And they've apparently been working on this for a couple of years now behind the scenes. Uh, and again, that's going to probably roll out with some of the AI announcements that they announced with Teams. I think that's pretty
Yeah.
wild. I don't know. What do we think about all this?
No, it's nice. It really is nice for them to be moving away from Electron. Electron is the bane of my existence on Windows. I hate any Electron app. I want it to be either WebView 2 or something more native. I think I assume it will perform similarly to the Outlook Monarch client, which is, I believe, probably based on the same thing, right? It's a WebView 2. I think it's React based, and that's fine. I have other issues with Outlook Monarch, but performance isn't one of them. I think actually it performs relatively okay. So yeah, I'm assuming they're jumping on that tech, and it will be that performant as well. And that's good news. It'll be great news for low-end PCs, education PCs that are using Intel Celerons or Intel Pentium device chips. Those PCs will benefit immensely from this updated Teams client because it'll be lighter, it'll be nicer to use, it'll just be better performing. It's also great for Windows on ARM, although I think that's been less of an issue these days with the ARM native client for Teams. That said,
but
Still, exactly. Yeah. It will benefit basically every PC that runs Teams because it's slow on everything, even a Core i9, 12900XK, whatever they are. It's sluggish, and you can feel it. And this will hopefully improve that quite nicely. So yeah, this is great news for Teams users. Sadly, we don't actually use Teams to work. I wish we did. It would be great. It'd actually make our job easier, so we'd be able to actually talk about it and understand things, but we don't.
Our company is too big. They're all on Google, everything Google and Slack. So we won't be using it for that, but maybe for other ways. But I love the new Outlook One. I think it's really nice. It performs well, looks cool. Hopefully it'll go down that route too. So we'll continue to follow that story, but that should happen in preview next month. So really cool stuff. Why don't you talk about the Microsoft and NVIDIA plus Nintendo news that also was announced this week?
So Microsoft held an event for press in Brussels this week. I believe it was after. So Microsoft basically presented in front of the European Commission, I believe, this week. Because they aren't too happy with the ongoing Microsoft Activision merger or whatever acquisition. They've raised concerns, and unless Microsoft provides a good case for why they should go ahead, it's possible that it could be blocked. And if it gets blocked, then it's basically game over as far as maybe the EU will be like, you need to not have this, that, and the other as part of this deal. Microsoft doesn't want that, of course. They would like to have the whole thing because that's what they're paying for. So, so they presented in front of the European Commission and basically presented the facts. So hey, this is the market share, this is how this goes, this, that, and the other. Here's why we think our acquisition benefits gamers and developers and the industry, yada, yada, yada. And it basically comes down to Microsoft. This is all happening because Sony's kicking up a fuss, and Sony, of course, they are. They don't want to lose. They don't want the potential for Call of Duty, which is arguably one of the biggest gaming IPs in the world, to go exclusive to Xbox. And Microsoft has said for a number of months now that that's not what they intend to do. We intend to treat Call of Duty like Minecraft. Minecraft was acquired by Microsoft in 2012, I think 2013, and it's not like they took that. Made that exclusive to Xbox only, right? That's still available on PlayStation, PC, Nintendo, wherever you can find Minecraft phones. That's still there today because Microsoft said, this is a cross-platform game. We don't intend to make anything exclusive. They've said they want to do the same for Call of Duty. Sony has not been listening to that, and they have been complaining to all sorts of regulators and saying, we need to be careful. Please try and block this. So Microsoft basically just invited press, and after talking to the European Commission, they basically said, listen, we have signed a deal with Nintendo for 10 years of Call of Duty on Nintendo devices. And that's a big deal because last time I checked, the only real console Nintendo ships currently is the Nintendo Switch, which is not even a flagship tablet for 2023. It's a 5-year-old, 6-year-old piece of hardware at this point. It's not new, it's not powerful. Yet Microsoft is committing itself, if the deal goes through and they do actually acquire Activision with Call of Duty, that they will deliver Call of Duty on Nintendo devices for the next 10 years. Now, I think this also implies that there's a new Nintendo product coming that is going to be more powerful than the Switch. Otherwise, that's going to be a nightmare for Microsoft to try and figure out. But in addition to that, they also said, again, they've also said, so it's still if the deal goes through. But they've also said that NVIDIA GeForce Now will also have access to Xbox games via its cloud streaming service. And the reason they're making these announcements is because they're trying to prove to the EU Commission that we don't intend to make things exclusive to our platform. We want to to make products that can be played anywhere. And so we're making, we have xCloud, yet we're still making our games available on a competitor's cloud streaming service. We have we will have Call of Duty if you let us buy it, but we are willing and able to make this available on Nintendo Switch. In fact, we've signed a deal that says that this is what we will do if we acquire Call of Duty. And then Microsoft pulled out a piece of paper and said, look, this is the deal, this is the agreement, the contract we sent to Sony. We sent it to Sony months ago. All they need to do is sign the dotted line and they've got Call of Duty for the next 10 years. And they haven't. Sony is refusing to do that. Now, the Microsoft has said, if they have an issue with the contract we sent them, we're willing to sit down and talk. We can communicate with them and see if they want anything changed. Any reasonable changes made, we're happy to make it. So this whole thing and talking to the EU Commission and talking to press as well, I think puts Sony on the back foot quite significantly, because now they look really bad. Because Microsoft has made these deals, they've proven their point. They're not going to just buy Call of Duty and then go, actually, we lied, it's all for us, no one can have it. That's not going to happen, because they've made deals now of Nintendo and Nvidia GeForce. Sony is the only outlier who is still essentially against this deal. Will this be enough to save the acquisition deal? I think so. I really can't see Sony coming back with a stronger case for why they shouldn't buy it at this point. But it is annoying for Microsoft and everybody involved that they had to go to this length to get on the record that, yeah, listen, the Call of Duty is for everybody. We will continue to make it for everybody. Sony has nothing to worry about. Dan, do you have any thoughts on this?
Not really, outside that Microsoft is really, going on a positive press tour to try to really get ahead of, any legislative blockades. I think it's really dumb what's, Sony's position. Anyone who knows tech and follows this stuff, it's just like, it just doesn't make sense to try to block it. But, money's being thrown around here, and Sony has a lot of, they lean on their own politicians, and, it doesn't surprise me that they're trying to, block this, even though, yeah, they're the number one in gaming right now, and they will remain the number one gaming. They just had an outstanding quarter for shipping of PlayStation 5s. And it's just a weird thing for them to do that. It's not weird. I mean, they're protecting their self, and no matter what the cost, right? But I don't know, these agencies, these legislative bodies, it's all at a whim for them. It's who gets into their ear first, Clearly, Microsoft is trying to earn public favor, and I think they're doing a pretty good job at that. But it's really kind of tough to tell at this point. And I don't know. We'll just have to continue to see what happens. Hopefully, though, we should be finding out more. I imagine in the next coming weeks what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think this was originally supposed to close in March. I don't know if it will in March at this point, but it should hopefully be this year, assuming things go ahead and it isn't blocked anywhere else. I will say that the event that they held with media was basically annihilated Sony in regards to raw data, in that Microsoft had lots of numbers to showcase how Sony is actually already essentially a monopoly in the gaming industry, and Microsoft certainly isn't. They had a board where it's like, in the European Economic Area, market share for console gaming is 80% Sony, 20% Microsoft. And this is the only time, I think, where showcasing a number where it says you are on the back foot, you have the lesser market, actually benefits Microsoft. They'd never really share these numbers in their earnings calls and whatnot, but because it actually benefits them to be the underdog here. They're like, actually, by the way, we only have 20% of the market in this area. So, you can't really call us a monopoly when we don't even have 50%. We have 20%. They also mentioned that Sony has 286 exclusive titles for PlayStation. How many does Microsoft have? 58. The whole Xbox has no games thing, it still applies, essentially, what they're trying to say. How can anybody who is regulating the sort of thing look at those numbers and go, yeah, but Microsoft still is a monopoly and this, that, and the other in the gaming industry, when they clearly aren't? And, we can really thank the Xbox One for that. Microsoft really dropped the ball with the Xbox One. Their whole Xbox brand went downhill, right, and Sony took over and became maybe it's not fair to call them monopoly, but they came the number one leader in the gaming industry, especially in consoles. Microsoft has been not even a close second. Sony's been well ahead, and I guess technically Nintendo can be considered second now because the Switch sold billions. It didn't actually sell billions, but it sold millions of units. Xbox has never really sold that many units since the One launched, and I don't think that's changed with the Series X.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll be curious to watch, but we'll see what happens next. The end of the day, though, consumers seem to be winning here. So
Yes.
having the ability to get your Xbox games on Nvidia and vice versa, and on Nintendo, I think it's going to be really kind of cool. So looking forward to that. All right, we're going to kind of wrap up the podcast here. Just a couple more things, stuff in the works. I got the Samsung Galaxy Book 3 Pro review, hopefully coming maybe next week. I'm trying to really wrap that up along with the phone, the S23 Ultra. I'm not reviewing the phone, but I'll do a separate piece on it. Why I think it's such a great phone, although a very expensive one. And I will also be getting the Book 3 Ultra. Sorry, trying to forget the names here. The Galaxy Book 3 Ultra in tomorrow. So that's the new one, the new form factor for them. Well, it's a 16-inch laptop. The big difference is that one actually has an NVIDIA GPU in it. It's either the 4050 or 4070. I'm not sure which one I'm getting, but it's a 16-inch 3K AMOLED display. And, this is geared more towards creators, and it's going to be a much more powerful device. I'm kind of curious about that one. I'm also pretty sure it has a number pad for you number pad freaks out there. So we'll be taking a look at that soon. Look for some photos of that stuff. And I still got to review this Razer camera, which I'm actually using right now, which overall is a really, really good camera, but does have one major flaw, which I'll talk about in the review as well. And yeah, that's kind of about it for me. Zach, what do you have? What are you working on?
I am actually currently reviewing the Surface Studio 2 Plus. We finally have one in to review. I haven't actually seen many reviews of it, and I know a few people on Reddit at least were disappointed in that. And that you can blame Microsoft for not sending them out when it first
They're
launched.
expensive.
They're
Yeah.
expensive, yes. But we have one in to review now, so I'll be writing that up over the next week or so. First impressions of it are obviously the added performance is nice. It's not much different from the Studio 2, which I dailied for a long time. However, I will say I have, and I don't know if this is a driver issue or what, but it drops frames a lot, especially when you're doing like heavy tasks. If you, for example, if I'm editing a video in Premiere Pro and I have maybe Photoshop open, a few File Explorer windows, browser, Slack or whatever, and I'm like, moving windows around, it lags a lot, and I think I know why. It has so most, I guess, modern PCs these days have both integrated and dedicated GPUs. It has the Intel Iris Xe, which is built into the 11370H. Then it also has, obviously, the 3060 NVIDIA RTX graphics card as well. The Studio 2 only had the dedicated GPU. It didn't have an integrated graphics chip either. So
That shouldn't matter.
But right, I thought so. But I'm guessing it's because the resolution's so high and Windows itself is just using the basic Iris Xe. It lags a lot.
You could disable it. You should be able to disable the Iris
I might give that
Xe.
a go, yeah. But in my testing, it will just dropping frames left and right when you have multiple windows open. It's really not great. Obviously, the programs using the dedicated GPU are fine, but like Windows itself, just animating Windows, minimizing and stuff, it was just lagging a lot, and I don't know why. But yeah, I'll experiment with that and see what happens.
Yeah, that really shouldn't be an issue. I mean, almost all Intel chips. There are certain SKUs of Intel chips that don't have integrated graphics, but like the one I'm running, the Core i9 13th Gen has integrated graphics, and I have a 4080, and it has no problem. I'm running on a 4K 32-inch display. It's totally fine.
Interesting.
So,
okay.
But yeah, I don't know. We'll take a closer look at that. I'll also mention tomorrow, Friday, we should be having go live the XPS 13 2-in-1 review. That's running a 12th gen processor. It is fanless, of course, as well. And yeah, that'll be an interesting review. I'm not doing that one, but Zachary Body is. And so that should be going up. You can take a look at that, which will be kind of fun. And yeah, thing of the week, real quickly. So I'm late to this, of course, but a game came out a while ago called Vampire Survivor. I think that's it. Vampire Survivors. I always get the name wrong. I want to call it Vampire Slayer, but it's not. Vampire Survivors, and it's on Steam. I bought it. It's also available on Xbox. That's with cloud gaming. Oh, neato. So you can, if you're on Xbox Game Pass, it's free, or it's on Steam, and I believe it's on sale. I bought it on sale this week for a whopping $3.99. It's normally $4.99. It is the best $4 or $5 you're going to spend on a game, in my opinion. The reviews have been pretty huge for this already. Like I said, I'm late coming to this, but it's a simple. It's not even really a two-stick shooter. It's a single-stick shooter, and you don't have to even fire your weapon. It does it for you. So you literally just need to move around and just time your shots. And it's basically a swarming type game where you get more and more stuff coming at you. It's such a simple conceit, and yet it just works so well. It's super addictive because like every time you play it, you get a little bit further ahead. You unlock a couple more weapons, and it keeps having you come back. It's the perfect game. I've been running it on the Steam Deck. The perfect game. I would probably try it on the Razer Edge now that I know it's on Xbox as well. But it's a perfect game to kind of keep coming back to. Like I played on the couch during commercial breaks and stuff like that because it's a short game, but really good. Uh, yeah, and then in terms of movies, I've been watching Fleischman's in Trouble on Hulu, which is actually a really good uh, show. It's a series that's on there that's been really doing well, and it's more serious, but it's just really really good. And then what was it? Kunk on Earth? Is that show on Netflix that we were talking about in the chat?
Yes, yeah.
So Kunk on Earth is arguably the funniest thing I've seen in years. And the character of the show, I forget how to pronounce her first name. Oh, Philomena, Philomena Kunk, the character's been around for years
Yeah.
on UK TV and other series, but this is kind of the first experience globally that's on Netflix. She's played by Diane Morgan, who was also on Ricky Gervais's Afterlife
That's right.
series,
Yep.
and she was my favorite character of that show. She was so funny. I kind of have a crush on Diane Morgan. She's one of the funniest people I've ever seen in this show. So it's her going around the world explaining world history. And it is the most deadpan humor
Yeah.
you will ever see. The fact that she never smiles and cracks up with the stuff she's saying, and she goes around interviewing famous professors and historians and just asks the dumbest, most hilarious questions. And then there are a couple of running jokes in there, including her mate Paul, who is always getting into trouble. I can't stop laughing at it. I watched 2 episodes in a row, and I couldn't do a third because I was almost just like tired of laughing because it was just so good. But Kunk on Earth, Cunk, is on Netflix, and it's super intelligent and just so funny. Have you watched any of that?
Yeah, that was going to be my thing of the week. So thanks for doing
Oh, sorry.
that.
Well, at least we tacked it. Look at we didn't even talk about it before the
I
podcast
know.
about that.
Yeah. Well, there you are.
So
Yeah, no, I think it's great as well. I've been laughing nonstop. And yeah, you're right. It was originally, I think it was a sketch in a different show. That sort of character, that idea of her sitting down with historians. And originally,
yeah,
it was her asking really stupid questions,
yeah,
and like like they get like a proper professional like historian stuff, and then I'm assuming it was scripted, but maybe it wasn't. But they would be like, what are you asking me? That's just, and obviously they would, these professional people who are like high up, very like classy and stuff, and she's asking
right.
ridiculous questions, and they're looking at her like, I don't think so. But yeah, no, it's
Yeah, who
great.
did it better? Wait, was it who did it better, or did they improve upon it or invent it? And she was asking, like, I was good. She was like anal bleaching. I was just like that whole discussion was just amazing. It's a fantastic show. She's just one of the funniest people I've ever seen. So yeah, definitely go watch it. It's a series. I believe there's 5 or 6 episodes.
Yeah,
Um, it's kind of rewatchable too, just because there's so many jokes per minute that it's like almost hard to keep up. The Technotronic recurring joke also cracks me up every episode. um, with the music that keeps playing. You'll get it when you watch it. But yeah, definitely go check that out. And stay tuned, of course, for other more reviews and stuff like that. So Sarah's pointing out Dan looks a little bit stressed out today, probably a tough week. So I get this a lot. I had a PR person from Samsung apparently saw me on an airplane and like landing in Boston. She's like, I was going to go talk to you, but you looked really tired. And I have to explain to people like, I'm sorry, that's just my face. And I don't like saying that, but I've been told for years, wow, you look really tired or you look stressed out. Like that's just me. I'm sorry. This is my face. This is just what I look like. I'm not stressed out this week. It's been actually a pretty smooth week. Had a 4-day weekend, which was very relaxing and enjoyable. So no, this is just the way I look. Sorry. The difference is when I use the NVIDIA AI eye stuff, it opens my eyes wider. It makes me look like I'm more attentive. But yeah, sorry, I just have yeah, don't no need to tell me I look tired or stressed out. That's just who I am. I'm not tired or stressed out.
Dan, I think you look great.
Yeah, I say we're saying having resting bee face. Yeah, I've been joking. I don't want to use bee, but yeah, I would say I have resting jerk face, but it's true. If you ever see me at the gym, you probably would stay very far away from me, which is actually the way I want it. Don't ever approach me. Don't approach me at the gym. I don't want to meet friends or meet people at the gym. Anyway, I guess that wraps it up for this podcast. We will stick around for some Q&A, of course, and next week we'll be back on our regular schedule, Friday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern time on our YouTube channel, where you can go watch us live and join in on the video podcast. You can also watch previous episodes there, as always, and this will go live on Mondays now. We're doing a new thing where we got to post this live on Mondays, or sorry, the recorded podcast on Mondays. So don't yell at us if it's not available on Sunday. Apologies for that. It has to do with advertising, but it is what it is. As always, follow me on Twitter, Daniel_Rubino, Rubino. You can also follow me on Mastodon at Daniel_Rubino, at Newsy Social, NEWSIE.social. If you want to follow me there as well. Follow Zach at ZACBOWDENDEN. And as always, thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time. Take care, everyone. Hey, we got over an hour. Look at that. Amazing.
Nice.
So if you guys have
any questions, yes, now's the time to ask them. Cameron says, I think Diane Morgan would make a good Doctor Who. You know what? I fully agree. I had the exact same thought. I think it's the outfit she wears. It's very Doctor Who-y.
Yeah. I like. Yeah, her outfit's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, she would make a good Doctor Who, I think.
Well, let's get the what do they do on the internet, right? They do the petitions.
Yeah, this would be the next stop.
Get one going.
Yeah. Why the name of Boating Boatface doesn't Edge on Android support extensions and bottom address bar? Any idea if those are in the pipeline? Ever? ? It's been years. Assuming it's been years, I would guess no, they are not in the pipeline. I don't know why, because yeah, technically it does make more sense for the address bar to be at the bottom. However, Safari only just implemented this UI in the last couple of years, and it was really poorly received. So much so that they had to add back the old UI for users to switch back to. I don't know if people have gotten more used to it now on iOS, but I remember that being a big deal when it first rolled out and how nobody really liked it. The only people who probably liked it were Windows Phone users. Regarding extensions,
Zach,
I don't know why. Sorry.
Do you know anything about Project Codename Project Shine?
No, not to my knowledge. No. Is that a Windows code name, or was there any context to that? Was it Surface, Windows,
Microsoft
Xbox,
Project? Yeah, I don't know.
Azure, Office.
Yeah, if it's Azure, Zach doesn't have a very good Azure.
If it's Azure, I don't care.
Yeah.
Project Glimmer. I do recognize Project Glimmer. Give me a sec to see if I can look at what maybe that was. Project.
It sounds like a UI thing. A UI overhaul of something. It's been a while since Xbox has had a major UI overhaul. They like to do one every 2 years, so.
I'll look into it. I do recognize Project Glimmer from somewhere, but I can't remember off the top of my head what.
Someone asked about Duo 3 news. We don't have any at the moment, or I should say Zach doesn't have any at the moment, but I'm sure when he does get some, he'll definitely share it. But, I think it's safe to bet at this point, I think fall 2023 would be a long bet. Like, I wouldn't bet on that. So. I would say spring 2024 at the earliest, unfortunately. But that's fine. Again, Microsoft has nothing to lose here in terms of, the market. I get like if you're a Duo 2 owner, you're going to feel a little bit burned because you're going to have to probably move on from that device at some point. But the numbers are so low, probably, of users that it's like, well, they want to get this right. And don't forget, Microsoft will have a lot more, like it's hinted at the podcast, with Android and AI and stuff they can do around that. And we've already talked about how they're kind of looking more to customizing it. So this gives them a little bit more time to, I think, do all that, really kind of come back with a strong product. So
I think I know what Glimmer is. I don't want to say it just in case I am wrong.
Sarah's asking if Zach has the chat AI stuff. Yeah, he just got it this week.
Yeah, I just got it this week. I've not really had a chance to actually play with it properly yet. I think.
Well,
okay,
Xbox.
so sorry, go on.
Oh, go ahead. No, it's going to answer our question, but you can go ahead.
So I think Glimmer could be a dynamic. I could be wrong about this. I think it's a dynamic theming engine for Windows. It was an internal experiment last time I was aware of it. Essentially, what they were thinking of doing is allowing the user to essentially apply materials to like the taskbar and stuff. So instead of it being like an acrylic effect, you could have it maybe be like, I don't know, like like a more like a texture of some kind, and you could even do things like like when you hover your mouse over it, like it shines a light on it and stuff. Listen, I'm really pulling this from the back of my brain. I need to look into this more, but I think it's something along those lines, and I don't actually know if it's an actual thing they're planning to ship or if it was just an internal experiment. But yeah, to my knowledge, I think Glimmer is that. It's like you can add textures and like more customization for Windows theming. But yeah, I will. I hate to use the phrase "circle back," but I will circle back on that.
Oh, so I was asking about whether or not Xbox will ever get a PSVR competitor. I mean, I wouldn't say never, but Spencer's been pretty clear about how it needs to be completely all wireless, and I don't think he likes the technology very much because of its tendency to be isolating. But I don't know. I wouldn't say never because if the technology evolves to such a point where it can offer something that fits what he thinks would be a good point, or a good selling point, whether that means, that those combo AR VRs where it could switch between seeing in the room versus, being isolated. Apple's solution to that is to put so many cameras on it that it doesn't need to make the lens clear to see through. It just projects the room via cameras onto the lenses, so you're seeing the room through cameras, which is hilarious because the room is literally an inch from you, but you're going to have cameras to do it for you, which is a heck of a solution. But you can at least walk around and see stuff around you, and the fidelity is supposed to be good. But just ideally, you can have glasses that switch between them or something like that. I think maybe that technology gets to that point. Don't forget the Apple thing is supposed to be rumored around $3,000, so it's not like it's going to be cheap either. But I think as the technology evolved, they're open to it, but currently as is, they definitely don't want wires in your living room for people to trip on. And I still think, like I said, they sort of view gaming really as a thing you do with other people and not necessarily putting a thing on and just being alone on your couch. But we'll see. Yeah.
So a couple of hardware questions here. Will there be a spring Surface hardware release? I think we're due for a new Surface Go. Yes, to my knowledge, there will be, as always, a spring sort of launch window for new Surfaces. To my knowledge, it is Surface Go and possibly Surface Laptop Studio 2. Surface Laptop SE is also likely, though I guess that's not really a consumer product, so I guess they'll make less of a fuss about that. And possibly Surface Laptop Go, though I think that's more likely going to be the fall event, because I think there's some updates to the design on that product that I think they would rather save for the fall. But yeah, Laptop Studio 2, I'm not expecting any design changes. I don't even think there's a new size. I think it's the same size, and we're just getting 12th gen and better GPU, I suppose. And then there is the Surface Go 4, which to my knowledge will be ARM for the first time. There will, at the very least, there'll be an ARM variant of it with a 7C based chip, to my knowledge. And then the Laptop SE 2 is supposed to be an older Lake N processor, which I think, is that their new Intel? What are they called? They're like the low
Oh
end, the new
yeah,
Intel
yeah.
low
So I
end.
forgot the new name. Yeah,
I guess a
it's
new
yeah,
Intel low end.
yeah.
Then someone else was asking about Duo. If there's no Duo this year, what are they going to do? What's the plan? So I don't know is the answer to that. I had heard whispers that they were at least considering shipping a slab phone, like a normal sort of smartphone, at the tail end of this year to sort of fill the gap. But I don't know if that's actually a thing they're going to do. It was something that was a conversation they were having, because they have, of course, prototyped that sort of design and form factor. But whether or not that turns into a real product is another thing entirely. And if it does, or if it was going to, they would have had to have made that decision probably last year. And I haven't heard, or you haven't heard yet if they made that decision. So it's likely that we're not going to get any phone this year, which will be a real big shame. It does. It is a problem though if we think about the logistics of it, because the Duo 2 is no longer for sale because they haven't made any more. The Duo 1 goes out of support this year, and what do those users do at the end of that? Like, are they just expected to continue using a phone that's out of support for another year, until the end of next year when the Duo 3 presumably ships and they can upgrade to that? Because they can't upgrade to the Duo 2 because they don't exist anymore. You can't buy them. Duo 2 users are less in trouble because they have the 2 years left of support anyway, so they can just keep using that. But yeah, that's bad news for Duo 1 users, unless they decide to extend support for the Duo 1 into 2024, which they might be forced to do that, or they decide to start making more Duo 2s again, which I think is unlikely. But but I guess we'll see.
Is Laptop Studio 2 being made? Yeah, absolutely. That probably will come out maybe spring, maybe fall, or somewhere. I would be spring, summer, I would say they have to. Um, It'll be interesting they do 12th gen or 13th gen. That'll be, I think, the big question. And it's not a huge difference between 13th gen and 12th gen. I just want those extra cores because it's going to make a big difference on performance. The 13th gen is just 12th gen, but faster. Like, there's some other little optimizations there, but it's not like a huge shift. But the difference between 11th gen and 12th gen is massive, and that's what it currently is on, is 11th gen. So Laptop Studio with 12th gen, I think is going to be killer. Still one of my favorite laptops to use. So hopefully that happens sooner than later.
Are there any bigger Duo software upgrades that we can expect? Not in the immediate future. They have big plans for the Duo 3. I don't know how much of that will trickle back to Duo 2 and Duo 1. Probably not much if we consider the Duo 1 is out of support by the end of this year. But for current Duo users, they have features in mind and in the pipeline, things like inking on the lock screen, Windows 365 docking, a more advanced glance bar, I believe, is something they've also considered. The early vision for that glance bar, you was the ring thing, when it had the animation that plays when your phone's ringing. That was going to actually react to the waveform of the sound, the ringtone. Right now, it doesn't do that. I assume they're actually going to get around to doing that at some point. That'd be really cool. But yeah, they do have big plans for the Duo 3 and the software, but I don't know. I don't think any of that can really trickle back to the Duo. It could to the Duo 2, I guess, because I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
Surface Book 3 in May? Surface Book 3 came out.
I think you're saying, will it be like that one, the spring event?
Oh,
Yeah, it'll probably be. I don't know if it'll be an event.
Yeah.
It could be a press release like that. That may have released.
Yeah, I think it'll
also
be
a
just a
press release.
press release.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes they invite us to go see a device in person.
Yeah.
I'm not sure Laptop Studio. I feel like Laptop Studio will just be a spec upgrade, and
Yeah,
I'm
it
totally
will be.
fine with
I'm
that.
pretty sure it will be. Yeah.
Has anyone used Launcher 10 on Duo? No. I'm not I don't go down that route. It's either Windows Phone or it's Android. I don't like pretending Android is Windows Phone. It's just like, come on, you know? It's like having an ugly girlfriend and having her wear a mask. It ain't the same. Yeah, it doesn't put the mask on, doesn't change things, you know?
Right, last call for questions, then we must head off. So get them in now if you have them. Regarding Xbox VR, I could understand that VR was not the highest priority when Xbox back compat was more important, or they wanted to focus on Series X, but now it should be higher priority, I would hope. Yeah, I mean, sadly, I just don't think Microsoft Xbox is that interested in the form factor. Not until you can do it wirelessly with no latency and also without much setup. The biggest problem with VR is it's a process. You can't just do it. It's like I gotta now get my headset out, make sure the sensors are all working, make sure I have enough room. It's a whole thing, and especially if you're using a wired headset, then you gotta run the wire and then not trip over the wire. And if you've got kids running around, make sure you don't hit them with your controller or trip them over the wire. It's the whole thing. What are the advantages of an ARM Go 4 versus an Intel Go 4? Well, more energy efficient, which is great for a 10-inch tablet, which doesn't have the biggest battery. And also, let's be real, I don't know if the Snapdragon 7C or 7C series of whatever generation they're on is worse than what the baseline Intel Pentium that's in there currently, right? It's a Pentium, yeah. It's got to be on par, if not better, when running native apps on ARM. So perhaps better performance as well for that same $399 starting price. Of course, when you start emulating apps, that's when you will start to hit issues and performance will be worse. But yeah, also technically built-in data, right? Built-in LTE module at least for the 7C?
Some of them, yeah, but you can order without it, of course.
Oh, okay, fair enough. In that case, there probably won't be one.
Yeah, I don't think it would be.
Most likely no 16-inch laptop studio this year. I have not heard. I have asked, and no. To my knowledge, there is only the 14.5 or 14.4 inch model, which is what they currently ship. All right, with that, I think it's time to head off. So thank you very much for tuning in. We'll be back next Friday. We'll be back on Friday, so be sure to follow us on Twitter. We'll keep updated when we go live. But until then, we will see you next time. Bye.